Hi everyone, welcome to the TCC Industry Track Briefing today. I'm Charmaine from Enterprise Singapore and I'm from the TCC Organizing Committee together with our colleagues from the Intellectual Property Intermediary. Thanks for taking the time to join this session on the challenge statement of management and dynamic allocation of resources in a post-COVID-19 work setting by YCH. So for the benefit of those who have joined us for the first time, I'm going to run through how this works. This whole session is 1 hour. And first, there'll be a session by Wenta and Ryan from YCH for 30 minutes for startups and SMEs to better understand the challenge statements, the motivation for the statement, the desired outcomes, and the expectations for the proposal. The next 30 minutes will be a Q&A session. And we'd like to encourage all participants to take this opportunity to send in your queries, because this session will also help you to better refine your proposal and when you do the submission. So if there are questions that you'd like to ask, you can type your questions or clarifications into the Q&A function to make sure that you get all your grounds covered. So all participants' microphones and video cameras have been muted and disabled. And during the Q&A session, the questions will be answered through the chat. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Wenta to start the ball rolling.
Ryan, you want to go?
Hi, apologies. I'm trying to turn on my video. Okay. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So our problem statement is a bit of a mouthful, but I think Charmaine has handled that quite nicely. So let me just jump straight to the let me just give a bit of brief background where we are. So we at YCH actually is my grandfather's surname, Yap Chui Hock. My name is Ryan. I'm the head of growth of YCH, and where I look into is new business strategies, new business models, new business technologies, and which is why I'm one of co-hosting this problem statement sharing together with Wenta. We're both in the innovation department. So that's enough about me. On to YCH. So we are the largest local homegrown supply chain solutions company, and we believe we're a leading regional supply chain management partner. For many of our clientele, they tend to be large MNCs in the S&P 500s. Dell is one of our largest customers, and we serve them not just in Singapore, but across the region. And where we tend to grow our strength is we see ourselves as a 7PL player, which means we do 4PL, fourth party logistics, as well as third party logistics. So we don't just do the work, we help to refine what's the best way to do it, and then we execute and deliver what we promise. Right, next. I'll give a brief background as to how this challenge came about, and I'll let Wenta dive into it. So how we decided to come into this is because it being an industry level challenge, we decided and thought very hard and looked deep and decided what is the real problem. It's actually that supply chain, by its very nature, is very complex, right? It's because of that, it requires very versatile solutions. And because of that, it's very difficult to automate everything 100%. And therefore, we'll always be relying on people to some extent. And that has been never truer than in this COVID scenario, because all the machines and whatever that you may have, at the end of the day, you still need people to run. And when there's no one that can actually man the machines, or no one there to man the computers, the phones, all your automation doesn't really work, right? And therefore, we decided that we need to look into people. I think there's been an over-focus on automations and innovations, but we decided to go back to the heart of it, which is our people is our strength. Let's figure out how to make the industry attractive so that we can get the best talent, the brightest talents, retain them, train them, and reward them. And because of that, we believe that this is worthy of an industry level challenge, because we believe that other people will face the same issue. All right, on to Wenta.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So as mentioned by Ryan, people is we need to relook into how we manage our manpower, the labor workforce. So there are three areas that we want to seeking solution for. As you can see, for the first one is measuring the manpower productivity to recognize and reward the individual talents. And okay, I will be go dive in further for each of the points. So here is just a quick high-level view of what we are looking for. Then the second one is after you knowing the productivity of your operation, you want to know what's the forecasted, the level they want to reach, then you will know where's the gap. So in that gap, we will want to have a system that to train our employees to reach the level where we want to, the goal that we want to hit. And lastly is not just on the ground level, we want to have a solution for the higher management to make better and informed decision when it comes to resource planning in a more limited and confined norms like today in COVID-19. So for the first point, we want to capture individual productivity. We want to have this system. Why? Because in today's context, most of the industry people, they use total labor productivity to calculate how well their operation is doing. But now we want to go for a level deeper, where we want to measure individual productivity. So when you go down to this level, you can have you can use system timestamp like the start date and the start time and the end time to complete it for each task. This kind of information can be captured from the system, but there is some inaccuracy in it because in scenarios like the employee started to work on this inbound receiving of goods, but she happened to go distracted by another colleague and go and do something else. So this task was actually triggered and start for it included the time that she takes to do other things. So in this kind of scenario, there is inaccuracy in the timestamp. So is there any way where we can really to find out what is the more realistic timing for this? Secondly is we are looking for a creative individual productivity measurement. What I mean by that is we don't want to just quantify how much output and how that the person can produce and how much hours that he put in to produce the output, because everyone is different. We have older age group, we have younger age group. Youngsters might be doing a work more faster than the elderly, so we cannot put them on the same level to compare. So we want to have a tier system to really segregate, to segment them, and to pick to benchmark differently. Yeah. So the desired outcome that we're trying to achieve is we are seeking for solutions like IoT devices or even machine learning capabilities to help us to track all these activities and do an analysis to understand the distance traveled to fulfill a task, or the time taken, why is it taking such a long time to fulfill it. And I mentioned earlier, to calculate the individual productivity level and group the different tier. What I mean by that, maybe it's like we can have metrics of that made out of the timing, okay, give me a moment. So to give an example of what I mean by different tier, right, is we can have metrics like employee has completed a particular course and add up and sum up with the efficiency in completing specific tasks and his time in, time out, or even the number of MC that is taken throughout the month. So with all these calculations that comes together, we want to give them for example, a level, maybe from level 1 to 10, how effective, how productive is this employee. Maybe to with this kind of segment quantifiable measurement, we'll be able to make more informed decisions. So for example, the operation manager will know that when I come in for the day, there are staff that did not come to work. and I know that I have level 5 staff, I have level 1 staff. Level 1 could be just join only, so he might not be very familiar to fulfill the activity for the day. So in this kind of measurement, we will know how to plan for our orders for the day and how to plan around it. And maybe we can look into gamification system to incentivize employees to work more effectively and efficiently. So we can work things out on how to reward the better ones instead of just having a favoritism by the operation manager to certain staff only. We want it to be more objective and reward people in more tangible and concrete evidence. So the second point that we want to address is the system guided learning. In today's context, new employees came to logistics industry, and work is always on the job training. Always learn from the experienced coworker, and when you learn from the experienced coworker, I would say that you're only limited and bound by how much the coworker knows only. So every coworker has different knowledge, different level of practices. So in that sense, there are a lot of inconsistency in employees' learning progress. And although you can have managers to sign off all this on the job training assessment of documents, but to tell you the truth, there is no system that manages what employee has completed what kind of training. So that we are seeking for a solution like an educational platform where maybe the staff can have mobile devices, or they can have their own use on their own mobile device to seek for information. Because in maybe taking warehousing as context, right? The processes can be very standard and common across operations. So there is always inbound, which is incoming of goods, and outbound, which is going out of cargoes and inventory management. So in these steps, right, you always be in sequence one after another, where unloading of cargoes, then you upload of inbound documents and stuff like that. So you know that in these specific tasks, when the newcomers join, they will tend to ask a coworker, hey, how do I do this? How do I fulfill this task? So imagine they have a system that has this kind of information to fulfill their allocated tasks, and this system has the best practices and the best the knowledge in this system. They could have achieved the job without having to ask the co-workers on how to fulfill the task. So this kind of education platform, we want to capture the best practices and the tacit knowledge from the experienced employees who has been working for a long time in YCH. So imagine when these employees were to leave the company, they bring away their most valuable knowledge to them, and it will cost the company a reduce in productivity. It will take about maybe 2 months, according to research. It takes about a few months for a new employee to catch up to the same level of productivity. So if we could have captured this, it would have minimized this loss of productivity. So this educational platform also can serve as a quality assurance compliance tool. We know that everything that we teach is already vet through and in compliance with the ISO that we set for every operation. Yeah. And lastly,
if I may step in here, just to go back one slide, I think the reason the industry level issue that we saw is that so supply chain is a tough business. And there's a lot of valuable knowledge built up over the years that's inherent in individual operations managers, individual senior material handling specialists, forklift drivers, or very specific product knowledge, and that is all trapped within the brains of our employees. Excuse me. And what we notice that it tends to be the same throughout the supply chain, because I think the Chinese have a joke, which is there are three things which you want to be very old: doctor, lawyer, and logistician, right? And the experience actually speaks for a lot, because individual productivity, there's only so fast a person's hands and legs can go, and it's all about fighting inefficiency, trying to make the least number of steps while still achieving the highest accuracy and speed. So that what we hope to achieve from here is, the way I looked at it is some kind of perhaps in-system tutorial that, like, if someone is a bit newer, this tutorial will actually be more invasive, more hand-holding, guiding this person through the individual steps. That, okay, have you done step 1? Have you done step 2? Have you done step 3? Did you cross-check step 3A? Did you cross-check step 3B? I noticed you skipped the step. Whereas someone who is more experienced, who has maybe a higher level, referring back to a gamification system, would have a more light touch kind of system, whereas the system would be able to be more hands-off with this employee and allow this person to speed through certain things, even though let's say to read the document takes 5 seconds, this person clicks through the step in 2 seconds, right? Whereas the system will let that go if the person is, say, level 100, very experienced. Whereas if a person is level 1, right, and this person clicks through in 2 seconds, the system will stop you and say, there's no way you have completed this task in time, you must have skipped something. So we're looking at be able to have this level of employee engagement during our training, which is very impossible to give right now, because it's hard to find, you won't have enough people, right? And people are always busy. It's hard to have someone to mentor you in a very direct and hands-on manner. So why don't we have a system that can do that? So which is why we're looking at improving on-job training. We're looking at educational platform, because perhaps a new perspective or someone else who's very experienced has a new approach on how to do something, or has discovered something new. He can either ask a question or share that, and people can comment, and that could be integrated into the platform. So we actually systemize our learning. And I think as a whole, the industry can only benefit from something like this, whether it be as an industry level benchmark, or if we don't take it to such a grand height, at least within the company, best practices are kept, they are commented upon, even perhaps voted upon, and at least and there's alignment, right, that this is the best practice for this particular step. And I think that level of sharing will do a lot to not just boost the productivity, but as well as the employee engagement and the accountability. And of course job satisfaction. So that's what we're looking for. That is more or less our guiding light in this industry challenge, which really need to help the industry through all these approaches that may seem soft touch, but actually can also have big rewards in terms of actual increased productivity, increased level of retention, and that's why we're looking at the problem in this particular approach. All right, Wanda, next slide.
So on the last point is more for the operational managers, because every decision that they make in daily basis is always based off the knowledge that is in their head. So taking you through how a operation manager will face on daily basis is, today I come in, they're bound to have maybe have employees that did not come to work for some reasons, and is the current manpower enough to fulfill today's volume? Do I need to leverage with other operations, or do I need to overtime, make my employee overtime just to fulfill these orders? This kind of answering, it's all based on their own calculation, their own understanding in their head. And when you don't have a measurement to know when you don't measure your own your employees' productivity, you don't know how much you can achieve. And what if you want to produce a new improvement to the process? You want to change, for example, you want to add in a new technology into your to replace the manual process. You don't know how much improvement do you get at the end gain out of this implementation, because you don't have the values in before and after. So that is why with this kind of tracking of individual data or the activity, it will help us, it will help the operation in making such a decisions, in knowing whatever process improvement that he do, he will know how much he had gained out of it. And when for, okay. So on the third point, bring out 6-month data for potential customers. So that is more relevant for business unit team when they want to engage new customers. You tend to ask the operation managers, can you give me a data, can you give me the number of how much you can achieve, for example, on a e-commerce hub per day basis, what is your activity timing, this kind of scenario. So an operation manager sometimes can get the value of the system and or even give a number off the head. So it's not really that accurate, and anyone in the industry can give any pluck out a number off the air to tell you how good they can achieve. But with this kind of system in place, we can, and there is data that is out there and there is evidence, we do not need to pluck a number. In the industry, everyone will always give you will give you the true number if you have this kind of system in place. And for resource allocation, what I meant by that is in running daily operation, although you have the manpower, you also need to take into consideration for your number of equipments, your forklift, your reach trucks, or any equipments that have to take into consideration to fulfill the task for the day. So it's not just the man aspect. There are also other considerations that we want to put all this information together and advise the operation manager whether you can fulfill the task for the day, even if the system will help you calculate the gaps, even if you cannot fulfill the task, how many manpower you need. And they can advise you accordingly with which manpower from which operation that can help you to achieve this. And with this central operation manager, because as YCH, we are 3PL, we have a lot of operations and different operation manager managing different individual operations. You need a central guy to really see the whole picture and know which operation is doing lesser volume, which operation is in need of help. So this virtual manager will have know that on their on the back end. We know that, oh, maybe this guy with these skill sets can help to improve the gap for this higher volume operation, and he will advise the operation manager, okay, you can take this guy from this person to fulfill a task. You don't need to do overtime for the for the day. So this is the kind of dashboard or visualization or advice tool that we are seeking for the higher management to make their decisions. Yeah. So in a nutshell, when we to piece everything together on the solution that we're seeking, it will look something like this. On the left side is you have in the gray box, you will see is more of a data capturing, and the middle box with the blue color is more like the solution, the individual productivity, which requires a certain area like technologies like data analysis, Internet of Things, and gamification model to fulfill that part, and system-based learning. And with all this capturing and processing of data, it will give a higher level where the operation will become a virtual operation manager and advise the assist the operation manager in making the decision. So although this system has to be integratable with YCH systems like warehouse management system, enterprise resource planning, and even human resource integration, integrated system. So what I'm trying to say is, on the right side, you can plug and play with other companies' system. And what we are looking for is on the left side, where we are not just looking for an individual part like I want to have a system that can help me do coaching, but I want a more holistic. We want a more holistic solution to solve the challenges that logistic industry face. Yeah.
All right. So just one more point or two. I mean, to further encapsulate this, I think we are also looking for a system that is versatile, right? It's flexible. It can account for our different processes based on our systems, because we actually update our systems or create certain system pathways based on the account, based on the multiple myriad of factors, and these constantly change, and they are not. There's no one system fit all, right? Our systems are actually modular. They're configurable, right? And different, and there are different steps for different processes. And our systems do reflect that. And we're looking for something that is equally versatile, that can take on these steps, put them into the systems, and gather the productivity levels for each of these processes, put in the best practices for each of these processes, right? And then on the virtual operation manager side, use AI preferably, right, to figure out what's the best way to go about solving the issue, or filling a resource gap, or resource planning, or allocating the correct number of resources to fulfill the task for the day, based on the ever-changing nature of our supply chains and the operations that we face. So this link is quite crucial. What we intend to do is, of course, us being the problem statement holder, we will offer our system as a test bed to start, right? And of course, our processes, that will be fixed, but then we work based on that to start the ball rolling. Of course, in the end, this YCH system can become any other system. We don't mind. After all, this is an industry level thing. But we are willing to use ours because we believe ours is it's in-house. We built it ourselves, so we believe it's robust enough to cater to the reality that there will be many systems that that whoever creates a solution will have to plug into. And I think if you can do it with our system, you should be able to do it to others, because at least you have a decent base of the randomness that supply chain does face as an industry. So this way of having to work, I think Wenda was just trying to explain that it won't just be YCH, there'll be many other people, but we'll use ours to start. And I think with that, we should be able to move into Q&A.
Thanks, Ryan and Wenta, for sharing about the challenge statements and to explain more about it. So a gentle reminder as well to all the participants, if you have any questions, you can send it via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, to give in some of the queries that you might have, and to take this opportunity to also make any clarifications. So currently we have got a series of questions that have been received during the course of the presentation. So we'll start off. So there are two. What's the total value of the goods, and does it mean monetary value? And also how when it comes to like service, right, how is this quantified, and whether there are any examples?
Okay, Wenta, can you go to the slide about value of goods? Okay, so for us, okay, perhaps it's a bit of a misnomer, but when we talk about productivity, let's use an example. Let's say you have an operation where you take in an entire pallet of cargo. Pallet is a wooden waffle with many cartons on top of it. You take in by the pallet, right? And you issue cargo out by the carton. Okay, so let's look at the issuing out process. We call it outbound process. How the productivity for the outbound process could be, for example, how many cartons do I send out per hour, right? So when we say value of goods and services, it's a big fat X. It's unlikely to be monetary value. It's usually item, right? Either item per how many items did you ship out, maybe per hour? How many orders did you process per hour? How many pallets did you move out per hour, or the other way around, how many products did I take in, how many pallets of cargo did I take in per hour. So I hope that answers the first question. It could be anything, but it's usually whole numbers. It's going to be like cartons or pallets or cargo related, unlikely to be money, dollar value, because we don't move cash, we move cargo. So as for the how do I quantify service produced, I assume the earlier answer would cover that, but usually it's account based for let's say outbound, I take the pallet, right? Maybe let's say I need to do something to the cargo. So we measure based on what is the process involved. If the process is outbound, then I quantify by, we can literally count them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If let's say it takes me 2 hours to finish 2,000 cartons, which is not a bad number, then you have 2,000 over 2 hours, then you have a 1,000 carton outbound per hour. So that's how we measure that. But I think this would be something that we would be happy to handhold the solution provider through, right? Give them a bit of a crash course into supply chain. So I think that one we'll be happy to clarify as we go along. So any further questions on that route? Rest assured, we will expect to provide the supply chain know-how for this particular challenge.
Thanks, Ryan, for walking this through with us. Okay, so for the next question, what incentives do you give to experienced employees to share your tacit knowledge, to share their tacit knowledge?
Sure. So when we're referring to tacit knowledge, I mean, perhaps when I move to the one slide down, please. Okay, perfect. So I think this is where the term tacit knowledge came about. So what we're trying to do here is we actually believe our employees, they're not selfish people by nature. They're very happy to share their experience with their co-workers, because the best reward is simply this: the job gets done faster. Everyone's more productive. People don't have to OT, can go home early, no fires, no noise from customers, and the project goes well. I think us being our family culture, there's an inherent understanding and a desire for the account as a whole to do well. So that alone is an incentive. But why we raise this as a problem statement for us is we believe that let's assume that everyone is a happy family working together. There is still the issue of there really isn't a platform or portal to share this information beyond storytelling, a one-to-one transfer or 1 to 2 or 3 people that your individual team sharing. You don't get to share it across the company, and for a company like YCH, you don't get to share it across countries, right? Never mind sharing it across accounts. We can't even share it within a country. And don't talk about cross-country in a scenario like YCH, right? So that is why we didn't really feel a need to explicitly lay out an incentive to share tacit knowledge. But going back to the gamification point, our hope is that I think similar to Reddit or certain forums, if people share good information, they actually get points here, because people will vote them up or zap them if it's negative. I mean, let's not put that function in. But I think from that system, if this person, let's say, is like like a level 10 knowledge sharer, he has shared a lot of things. People love his best practices, and people actually will vote, because platform everyone can see that this particular employee number or a username has a lot of good things to share. Right? I think from that system, we can recognize that this person is sharing a lot of his knowledge. Then we can measure the value, right? And we can reward this further, because knowledge management is quite key for us. And if someone can prevent brain drain, I think we'll be willing to, within the confines of the system, once you can measure that, provide an appropriate reward, likely to be some kind of allowance, or perhaps even like a prize for hitting a certain level of knowledge sharing. I think that is part of the gamification that we're trying to employ into this particular solution.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, we have got another question. This time is about the current workflow process.
Yep.
Whether there is a need for the startup or SME to review the current workflow, or has YCH already done that, and then the participating SME or startup will then work based on what the current processes are.
Sure. I think as a base, we will be happy to provide our processes, because we are what we are. We're 63 years in the business. 65 years in the business. We are what we are because we've gotten to a certain point and gathered enough experience amongst the heads. So we would propose that at first our processes are plugged into the system, then you can measure the productivity, put in the learning, right, and then people can improve the process from there. Alternatively, we put in the process, the numbers are run, we realize that the process is not good, we're happy to change it. So it's not that we expect our processes to not change. We do expect it to improve. Hopefully after the systems goes in, we can see exactly where are the bottlenecks and improve that as you go on, because that honestly, that's the goal, right? But if not, at least we have our current processes, which we believe are best practices already, right? Put that in, measure and benchmark from there, and then we move on. And in fact, we believe our hope for this thing is that once this goes in, perhaps across the industry, other people will have the same level of epiphany. They think theirs is the best process as far as they can manage. They put in this system, they get better at solving the problems, the inefficiencies, and they tackle it. They improve the overall process, and they get overall efficiency improvement and more productivity. That's what we hope for this particular solution.
I think on this same note, there's a question, one of the last questions, on how many different work roles does this is this productivity measurement plan aim to cover? So since it's along the same topic, I think we can also take this question in.
Sure. How many work roles? Honestly, we hope to okay. To be fair, we won't be measuring the corporate level stuff because I think that's a bit difficult. That's like trying to quantify your doctors and lawyers. But at least on the ground, because it's tangible, right? We can literally see the product move. So we or see the product move in or out, or people we do a process called value adding, where you're either doing things like simple stickering or labeling to something more complex, such as actually changing the whole product. You actually take the product, you do something to it, such that it becomes a different product, right? So there are many different processes that we're talking about. So in terms of work roles, there are equally many, but this would tend to be restricted to the staff on the ground, like the operations folks. So they are your packers, your pickers, your people working in the warehouse. How fast do they process data? How fast can they churn out this report? How fast can they move the cargo in, out? How much can they do that customization, value adding services process that I talked about? So quite a lot. I can't give you a number because I don't get a number myself. It's X. It varies depending on my customer. But generally, ground stuff in the warehouse.
Yeah. On the same note also about the types of areas and job roles. You mentioned that it's like all those stuff that are on the ground lah. So
Yes.
there's also this question about the major service areas which we have just covered, and also then what kind of IoT sensors you plan to use to collect these data to evaluate the efficiencies.
Sure. Okay, I answer the second question first. I think we are open to whatever IoT sensors they plan to use. I think we can share that in our warehouse, at least in Singapore, we do use handheld scanners already, right? But the IoT sensors that we're referring to for this particular solution was such that it can allow us to track the productivity. So there may be a lot of wearables all over the place or something, gantries that can interact with the cargo moving in and out. I think we're quite open to look at that, but of course, cost will be a consideration. So we don't actually have a plan as to which IoT sensor we want to keep that flexible. So as long as it makes sense, we're quite open to using it. We even use RFID in our own warehouse if that helps. So that could be an angle to explore. So going back to the service areas, as I think in the earlier response, it really is very varied. But generally, all the activities done in the operations are on the ground. So the major processes are inbound, taking in cargo, outbound, moving cargo out, as well as inventory management. So maybe you do counting of inventory, or you do cleaning up of inventory, where maybe you put things together. That's another one. And the last one is value-added services. So that's where you're actually doing the stickering, the labeling, or anything else under the sun. So those are the 5 or 6 major areas, but within that, there are a lot of processes. So sorry, can't give you a number, but generally these are the 5 or 6 buckets of areas that we are looking at to measure. But basically anything that goes on in the warehouse, we would like to measure, but open to do it as a phased approach. Maybe we can start with simple processes and then work our way up as we go along. Open to that.
Thanks for the comprehensive sharing. Okay, so we can move on to the other questions. There's one also about whether track and trace of resources, for example, like humans and things, our things, items, are still required. And then also linking back to a later question about whether the root issue of these are like the track and trace of resources, humans and things, knowledge management, employee performance management, or a combination of all these three.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate summary of what the problems are. I think it's all of the above. Because without being able to track and trace, I can't go and do knowledge management because I don't know how good they are. I don't know how versed they are. I don't know what training they have received. To be fair, when I say I mean management as a whole would not really know unless I'm your direct report, right? And to get the information requires a lot of depth to drill. So I would say the problems are all of them, really all of them. Yes, all of them. I think track and trace, definitely, knowledge management, and the employee management, definitely all three. Yeah.
Moving on to a different topic, how much automation is there in the YCH workflow system?
Sure. I think for us in Singapore, there is quite a lot of automation. We actually use drones for cycle counting, for inventory management. We actually, half of our stock, our capacity in our supply chain city facility is actually managed by automated storage and retrieval system that measures about 66,000 pallets. Manages 66,000 pallets. But and we're also looking at goods to person automations as well for e-commerce and omni-channel enablement, right? So those are the buckets of automation that we have. So how much? I think we are trying to automate starting with the more monotonous and mundane stuff, things like simple moving of cargo. We're trying to minimize walking and picking. So these trying to minimize having to have a human involvement for tedious tasks like cycle counting, because it can be quite boring, but very, very important. So how much automation are there? There's quite a lot. Perhaps if you do submit something, you can come and see for yourself what we do have. And of course, we will hope that whatever solution, right, would be able to plug into the various automations that we use to actually track. Either through you build your own middleware, or you can actually leverage off ours, because we use our system to control the automation. So that could be a route to do so in case that is also a worry.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, we have got a series of manpower related questions. Right. So the first one is about manpower imbalances. So the question says that 50% reduction in instances of manpower imbalances caused due to poor recruitment and over-recruitment of personnel, whether this can be elaborated upon. And also via machine optimization techniques, it is possible to provide an optimized solution. However, there could be a good reason to have over-recruitment. So whether YCH can elaborate firstly on the 50% reduction in instances of manpower imbalances, and also whether through using a machine optimization technique, it will be possible to provide an optimized solution.
Well, I think it is very, very doable, honestly, because you have issues. Because right now you're managing based on averages, based on generalization. You don't dive deep into the individual account, what problems they're facing, what are the individual proficiencies and productivity levels of each of the people within the various operations. And our facility we have 5 floors of ramp-up warehouse fused with a 50-meter ASRS. So there are a lot of accounts inside. So all it takes is you have an issue where someone is overstaffed, right? And whereas someone else has maybe 2 people on MC. And because 2 people are on MC for, let's say, well, in this scenario, it's like 7 days, you hire contract staff for let's say, for the 7 days. When actually we have an overbalance sitting in another level of the warehouse perhaps. So this actually happens way more often than we think. It's just that we don't really have the ability to very concretely sit everyone down and say, look, this is happening here, because we don't measure. So I think by simply, you don't know until you measure, honestly. Right now, all of this is based on general feel, but no one can really, within our organization, no one can really give us the concrete data, the hard facts, and say, this is happening on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, this happens every end of the month because there's a huge spike, everyone over orders people, right? And then, or better still, there's an 8-hour shift, people work very hard for 2 hours, and then nothing happens, and people work very hard for 2 hours again, and then OT, right? So that means that there's a problem with the shift pattern. We could change the shift to accommodate such an odd activity, but we can't really do that with full confidence because we don't really have, we do have systems in place to do it, but it's not so advanced that you have like an AI down there that will constantly learn and provide suggestions to improve. So definitely doable, right? But as for the reason to have over recruitment, I think yes, we do agree there's good reason to have over recruitment, but as of now, it's based on a little bit of gut feel, a little bit of experience, a little bit of fortune telling. What we would like to is to have a system that can that can back us up. They can back us up and say, yes, I need to overstaff because A, B, C data shows this, that, and whatever. We don't really have that. At least we don't feel that there is such a thing across the industry because it's still it is still quite difficult to actually put in a system that can do that, as opposed to just going based on Gang Hu or Kung Fu.
I think adding on to what you have shared, there's also a related question. How do you work out your current headcount? Whether there is a kind of like a mathematical based calculation which are developed from the volume of a business or based on other factors?
Got it. Short answer is yes. There is mathematical calculation. We go based on past data, based on drawing similarities. Okay, this process has step A, B, C, D, E. They need to use software processes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And that's for something that we're already doing today. So there's some data there, right? And we bring in the new customer that looks like it has the same processes, requires the same software, and we extrapolate from there. So my team with this process, we need 10 people. Right, so this person has double the volume, I should need 20 people, right? So I mean, I'm generalizing, but in essence, yes, we use data. However, going back to the essence of this is I'm not measuring my productivity on an individual basis. I'm not hiring this person who's hired for this account cannot possibly be cloned and work in the very same account and provide the same numbers. I do not have the same team. I may have a different manager. I may have 1 or 2 different people that may disrupt the overall balance of the team. Maybe this team is particularly productive or particularly not productive, and that affects my entire count. So we would like to have that system to be able to measure them individually. Okay, based on this, this person is level 1, so you should expect this much productivity. Therefore, if you have 10 level 1 people, you need A. If you put in some experienced people, some level 1 people, your productivity number will be B, which is better than A, and all the other permutations in between. So we would prefer to be more mathematical, right? But to do that, we need better data, which is one part of the problem. If you in our 3-faceted problem statement that we put here.
The note of data, there's also a question about how the data of taxing knowledge of the experienced operators will be presented, and also who will be documenting this data, and whether the startups or the SMEs will be the ones who will do the interviews, or whether YCH will be the party.
Sure. Okay. I think this question makes me a bit hesitant to accept this person as a problem solver. I'm just kidding, but I mean, hopefully this will be automated. It will be done. I mean, right now we have a lot of information being shared online through forums, through comments. No one's really, how do I put this? No one's interviewing people and then typing it down for them. They literally put in the comments themselves. People can share knowledge on how to do very complex computer repairs from Reddit or from Microsoft Tech Online, right? So we are envisioning a similar process where employees who are actually, who are perhaps doing something, can either put a suggestion or put feedback for people to solve on a platform, right? And that is the documenting, and that is the presenting. As to whether interviews are necessary, I think perhaps this should be done in-house, because the only interviews I envision is if someone is abusing the platform to post nasty stuff or unhelpful things and consistently doing so, then we probably need to interview the guy. But we basically expect the solution to include a platform to share knowledge, a platform for people to interact with the knowledge provider, give feedback, praise the person who's sharing the knowledge or not, right? And then of course we need some way to police the information going around, make sure no one is posting seditious things or unhelpful things or nasty things just to abuse the platform. So that is in a nutshell what we're looking at.
We have got one more question about the manpower bit. I think earlier there was a mention about poor recruitment.
Yep.
So what does this refer to? And the person who took it that it means that whether the person does not have the correct skill.
Sure. I think poor recruitment, I mean, there are multiple facets to this. Poor recruitment could even be, I put out an ad, I need 10 people, 2 people show up. I'm short of 8, right? So that's also poor recruitment. But may not just be a correct lack of the skills fitting. It could simply be our outreach is not there purely because, as I explained earlier, what we see is that supply chain is a tough industry. You're not going to, you don't get as many people submitting resumes as, for example, a startup or someone who wants to work for in the tech space. Right, we are competing with people like that for talent, right? So recruitment is difficult, but we hope that with systems like this in place, actually it shows that supply chain is very dynamic, very fun. It allows us to reward and recognize good talent, right? And that would improve recruitment and improve the image of the supply chain industry as something sexy to work in. So poor recruitment, quite multifaceted, but I think generally we mean cannot find people.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, we move on to other topics. So there's a question about whether there are APIs available to collect information from the existing WMS, ERP, or HRIS systems.
Well, yes, I think APIs or EDIs, yeah, that can be arranged. Vis-a-vis our existing WMS, definitely can be done. HRIS, I'm not too sure because it's a bit of an old system. We're also looking to revamp that. But we could make that part of the criteria for our new HRIS, if any. But for our existing WMS, definitely some links can definitely be built. We can do that.
And the next question is on the number of equipment that is required to track real time. So the equipment means, for example, forklifts and reach trucks.
Yeah, there is one very gigantic piece of equipment, the ASRS. But in and of itself, you have 18 cranes over there, forklifts across 4 or 5 levels. I can't remember the exact number, but it's at least 70 forklifts and reach trucks at any one point in time. Yeah, I think at least 70. Yeah, but I honestly believe that the forklift and reach trucks will be a bit easier because there's only so many things that they can do, because after all it's a forklift and a reach truck. It can pick cargo, it can move cargo, it can put it back down. The challenge for us will be, how do you track the 300 employees that we have in the warehouse and what they are doing, because they do a lot of different things, unlike the forklift and reach truck. So if you can handle the 300, I think the number of forklift and reach truck should be a piece of cake.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, another question, whether YCH has done a comprehensive time study of the operational workflow before?
I think yes, we have definitely. I mean, as part of our processes to improve, and of course, when there's an issue or when there's new accounts, we will definitely do intensive time studies. But it's something that you have to do ad hoc. Every couple of months, you do one time, because there's a lot of effort involved. There's plenty of other things to do. And all this is structured data, right? There's a set process. There's set numbers. It's all digital. 6 cartons takes 2 hours by Tan Abing, for example. Just an example, right? And every month you only do 6. So that is something that we can actually study, and that's something that, because you have structured data sets, you can feed into a machine learning model. And therefore do away with the very rather tedious process of, we've got to gather data, we've got to verify data, then we've got to go and crunch it. So we have done it before, and we will continue to do it, but hopefully we will have help in the form of machine learning. and preferably we can do it more often as opposed to now.
Okay, last question. I think earlier in the slide there was mentioned about it's a challenge to pull out past 6 months data for potential customer. So whether this is just an example or it's a requirement for the SMEs and startup.
Yeah, I noticed this one person has asked a lot of questions. I hope he or she will be submitting the problem statement. I'd like to meet you. Okay, Wenta, can you move to the slide? I think it's 1 or 2 down. Sorry, this one. Okay, so what we meant for here is because our operations, at least for us, they also function in a kind of customer liaison kind of a role, right? So because of this, when you review the data, productivity numbers and stuff, what we mean that it's tough to bring out 6-month data for potential customers is like we are trying to show them that, okay, I can do all these processes. I can meet this productivity, therefore, based on that, because it will not be a scenario where I undercut when I actually can't do it, right? So if you have a system like this where you can actually, you maybe even create an industry standard way of doing this, which hopefully this solution will allow for, right? Then people can say, okay, bring me a past 6-month system A data, for example, and then I can show them, okay, people can verify, there's a standard, people can trust that it has gone through certain, can make certain assumptions of trustworthiness behind this. So right now what we do is we try to show it to them, but of course there's always be a level of skepticism, and given the current limitations, because we don't put a tracker anklet bracelet on everybody and track their movements 24/7, we can't, it's not as detailed as most of our discerning customers nowadays would prefer. Right, we can't show them individual, okay, what about this team? What happens when someone goes to MC? What do you all do? Can you tell me what happened? Why is there a spike here? We don't always have that on hand because a lot of it is not documented. It's in the head of somebody somewhere and they have to recall, right? Because fair is fair, there's a lot of things to do in our business. So to have the system there as a backup, as a clean record of what has gone on, what happened, what were the decisions made, what were the suggestions made by the system, and what eventually was done, right? If we could have all that, right, to go down to that level of detail, I think that would be something that would be helpful for our industry to feedback to customers, like, okay, this is not sustainable. I can't do it this way. You're causing me so much problems, or this is really good. This is working. Our improvements have shown a much better improvement over the past 6 months. I think to have that ability to speak the same language, I think would be quite helpful for the industry as a whole. So it's not a requirement, but I personally do expect that this is within the wheelhouse of the solution, because what we're suggesting is a way to gather data, make sense of data, make use of data, right, and influence the future, right? And if a system that can do all that cannot pull out my past 6 months data, then I don't know what kind of solution it is. So I don't believe it's a hard requirement, but we do expect it to be able to be done purely because our requirements should be within the capability. That's all.
Thanks, Ryan. We have come to the end of the session, and we don't have any more. We have not received any more questions. So for those who are watching, if you have any other questions, you can send it to tcc2020@enterprise.gov.sg or oi@ipi-singapore.org. So maybe before we wrap up, whether Ryan, you have any like final words or just like a wrap up, a summary for us?
Well, I think I'll just go back to why we're doing this. It's I'm a gamer, a bit of a gamer myself, and I find that the best way to encourage people to put in their heart and soul really is to engage them. One of the best games that are made have a very engaging, really put the reader, bring them into the story, give them the feedback, let them know how well they're doing, how well they're not doing. I think the best example is, for example, I think it's called Dota. I'm not sure if most people play games, but it's a very popular game, and it's a bit of strategy. And what we're doing right now, I liken it, is we're playing this game without knowing what anyone does. I don't know how much damage my characters can do. I don't know how much damage they can take. I don't know how smart they are, how fast they are, and because of that, I don't know how to use them. unless I study very, very hard, right, and take the time to know each of them to a granular level. And while I should be doing that, it would be helpful if I have this system that can make that clear for me so that I know how fast people are, I know how fast they will be, I know how to make them improve, I know where they need help, I know where they can help others. I think such a system would help the industry massively, and it would, and once you do that, once you perfect the supply chain, I think you can confidently strike into a post-COVID world because you know how to better utilize the limited resources that we have. And we'll continue to have limited resources. So how do we make the best of that? I think that's what we hope to solve with this problem statement that we have. And we hope to get as many good answers as we can. Right? Do ask us questions. We'll be happy to work through the process. And we don't believe that you need the whole answer. We're willing to work with you. So don't be shy. Do let us know what you've got, right? And we can work on it.
Thanks for the closing remarks. Yeah, so a gentle reminder to all startups and SMEs that the submissions need to be in by 1st October 2350 Singapore time. And with that, we have come to the end of the session, and thanks all for your attendance today.